What's going on, everybody? It's your man Cam for Blerdlines Reacts. I'm here with D'Angelo. New York Comic Con is full effect right now, so we're starting to get a rollout of different trailers and stuff. So the first one that we're going to actually react to is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms from our man George R.R. You know what I'm saying? This is his third series from his A Song of Ice and Fire. So we're going to watch it, react it, and yeah, I was just saying before, he's just out here butt naked rolling the money and just enjoying his life. So you know what?
Yeah.
Let's see what this one got.
Tree. Since I was a boy. They charged me to be a good knight, to defend the weak and the innocent, and I swore that I would.
Are you Baelor Targaryen?
No.
Then would you move the fuck out of the way?
Yeah. Sorry.
What's your name?
Sir Duncan the Tall.
Never heard of him.
Do you know every knight in the Seven Kingdoms, then?
The good ones. If you could bring me to Ashford, I could squire for you, sir.
Rob me, and I'll hunt you down with dogs.
You don't have dogs!
I'll get some.
Where?
Oh!
Boys, stop gaping. See to my horse.
I'm not a stable boy, my lord.
Not clever enough.
I know I'm just a hedge knight, but sometimes I think there could be more.
Why do you treat these royal lapdogs like they're your betters?
They are my betters.
These men have a name. I'm trading. What chance do I have?
I have no chance.
Falling star brings luck to those who see it.
So the luck is ours alone? I need to fight honorably. But sometimes I think I buried my courage alongside the old man.
Within every man, there are many men. So be brave. Be just.
Get up!
Be tall.
All right, not bad.
There it is. Yeah. It looks, it looks interesting. I think much like House of the Dragon, when we first saw that first trailer in the first season, you can see that it definitely feels like a different point in time in this overall world. You have Targaryens there, the Lord with the antler crown on is clearly a Baratheon. That's one of the Baratheons of that time. Probably that would be Robert Baratheon's either great or great grandfather. And you saw again the Targaryens are still in power. I like that the George R.R. Martin finally got the actual Targaryen sigil that he designed that he's been trying to get.
Oh, that's right. That's right. He's been trying to get that into the thing since I remember that. That was a big stickler for him for a minute. He was just like, look.
Yeah. Each series it seems like he's getting more closer to a truer adaptation of the stories from his world, because that was one of the things with Game of Thrones, is it kind of took away a lot of the more fantastical areas of his world. One of them being the magical parts of the world, and also, some of the more high fantasy aspects, and not just the sword and politics and things like that. I mean, we saw the White Walker stuff, but it didn't really go to, I think, where it is in the canon itself. But
yeah, because even in the main story for Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire, did Lady Stark come back as like almost like a witch slash undead-ish type of character that they
Yeah.
pulled that completely out of the show, but was
Yeah.
like kind of a big thing within the book. And like again, that even adding that aspect of it would have went more on the supernatural magicals part, because I think the one thing I think Game of Thrones got into is it got more about dragons, politics, and then boobs, and then they kind of pulled back on the boobs part, and then went ham on the dragons, and then settled in within the politics. And I think like each one's now slowly starting to embrace a little bit more of the magic side, a little bit more of the other stuff. And so this is the third series, or the third TV series. And again, they got dough, so it looked great already. Like I wasn't even like when I looked, I was like, oh, okay, our production value is still at a level that makes sense for Game of Thrones, and because this story doesn't have a big emphasis on the dragons, that gives them a little bit more leeway to have more fun and to do other things.
Oh yeah, and the good thing, the reason I kind of like, so what I was saying before is that he's been getting a little bit more of his truer adaptation in each show. So in House of the Dragon, we saw more of the visual way he wanted the world to look, and also the Iron Throne design itself looked more jagged, asymmetrical, not like a chair that anyone wants to sit on. It's cutting the Sirius and all that stuff, and that's part of his canon. Aegon Targaryen, the Conqueror, designed the throne specifically because his thing is that a king should never sit comfortably. And so when you look at the Iron Throne in the first show, it's like that doesn't tell that story. That looks like a chair that was fashioned to be sat in and sat in rather comfortably. So now with this series, it's kind of similar, where you see more of his sort of canon of how he envisions jousting in his world and how he envisions the Targaryens at this point. And it makes for a good companion piece because, again, when we get to the end of House of the Dragon, this is about 70 years after that. So Aegon, so the characters of the Targaryen family are the direct descendants of Rhaenyra and Daemon Targaryen's line. So, but there's a couple generations removed, but this shows where the Targaryens are left after that devastating civil war. And you saw in the trailer there, the sort of fake dragon, they're telling the story, and because that's what it is now. They are only dragons in symbolism. They're not dragons literally anymore. They don't ride the dragons. And one of the things that you will see in this show is that sort of has an impact on how the rest of the Westeros sees the Targaryens, as well as there's still a memory of the dragons close enough to where none of the great houses are willing to risk attacking the Targaryens still at this point. Like we're a long ways, about 50 or so, 70, 80 years from Robert's Rebellion and the end of the Targaryen dynasty. But it took a while for that cultural memory of the dragons to fade, almost a century after the last rideable and destructive, potentially weaponized dragon dies from the world, and until obviously the nearest rebirths her dragon. So
and that kind of makes it kind of cool, because then it gives you enough separation from each show, but then also it can stand on its own, but then still has the links that ties it all together. And
where it's not too much, so you can enjoy each thing on its own, but there's that spiritual lineage. So House of Dragon, 174 years before Daenerys Targaryen's birth, and here you have 100 years before. So you see that this is what happened in that 70 years time, where at the beginning of House of the Dragons, the Targaryens are, the Rhaenyra VO says it, there was no more mightier power in the world at the time than House Targaryen, because they had all these adult dragons. Nobody challenged them, and the only thing that could undo them, like most empires, is
Themselves.
themselves. Right. So there you go. And this show is showing the beginnings of the end of the Targaryen dynasty. It's still intact. The royal line is secure. There's enough of the family branch to not worry, but you'll see as a result of the main plot line of this story, where they are having to fend off challenges left and right, and they can't do it like they once could by just mounting a dragon and pulling up and being like, get back in line.
And so then this one is from his 3 of his novellas that they're going to put basically into a series, I'm assuming.
Yes. So I have the book right here, Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and it's actually, this is sort of like the later publication of all 3 novellas collected, but the stories are The Hedge Knight, The Mystery Knight, and The Sworn Sword. And so in the first one, which you saw, that's mostly going to be, or those 6 episodes are going to cover that first novella. It's going to cover the Hedge Knight and the events that occur in there. The other interesting thing about this show, we don't see him in the trailer, but is the character Brynden Bloodraven Rivers, who appeared in Game of Thrones as the Three-Eyed Raven, but there was some problems with it, because, and that's why most of the fandom wasn't sure, because Bloodraven in the story is very grotesque, and he has branches that, like, he's like grown into the tree. They showed a little bit of it, but it's like coming. He has a missing eye that happened during the events a few years before the events covered in the Knights of the Seven Kingdoms, and he's got a red patchy stain, birthmark on his a splotch on his cheek, where his name comes from, because it said that it looks like a bloody raven against his albino Targaryen bastard features. But the problem is, in House of the Dragon, when Daemon looks into the future, he sees him sitting in the tree and he's got the birthmark. But with Game of Thrones, when we see him talking to Bran, there's no birthmark, and he's got both eyes and he's got short cropped hair. So they called him Brynden Rivers after the fact, because that's who he is, in fact, in the story. But it's going to be interesting to see how they're bridging these gaps, because there's already, House of the Dragon already created a kind of visual continuity error in showing the version of him with the birthmark on his cheek, where it didn't happen in Game of Thrones. And we know that these shows are connected in terms of canon.
Yeah. And then also the other thing I've noticed too is, like, so I haven't read the novellas, but I hang around with you guys, so I get all of this information.
Right.
But so Egg is Aegon, which is going to go on to be the Aegon.
Yes. So as far as, and so we'll just keep it at Game of Thrones continuity, because that's what now we're entering that realm from the adaptation. So as far as Game of Thrones continuity is concerned, Aegon, or Egg, the little pale kid that you see running behind, and the look, if just from watching it, I can see that the actor Dexter Soul Ansel is gonna do a good job, because that's very much how Egg is. Egg is a combination of kind of pretending to be a commoner, but he still has that imperious royal, like, you know, when he's a squire of Dunk, but Dunk says, "I'll come after you with the dogs," and he's like, yells back, "You don't got any dogs." You know, that's like, most squires wouldn't dare do that, because they would be afraid of being slapped in the face by the knight. So you can see that he gets it, that Egg is and this isn't a spoiler thing, you know, he's a princeling in hiding, right? He's trying he's pretending to be something that he's not, which is a George R.R. Martin trope, right? So, you know, if you think about Jon Snow, that's a parallel to his story, only the difference is Egg knows that he's a Targaryen and that he's a prince of the royal family. So there's a lot of cool things that you'll see that parallel the show, but Egg is King Aegon V. In the show, he is Daenerys. He would be Daenerys's grandfather, because Aemon Targaryen established that that Egg, we know that Egg is his brother, that they kept, but Aerys is said to be Aegon's the fifth son, which in the books series continuity, there's another Targaryen son of Aegon the fifth, who is in fact Daenerys's grandfather, and that is Jaehaerys the second. I think the reason they changed the whole Aegon Egg being Daenerys's grandfather and therefore John's grandfather is because of the whole, they knew they were going to name John Aegon. I don't know if Aegon will be John's name in the books. It kind of doesn't make sense when Rhaegar named a son Aegon already. So the likelihood is that John's name is going to be like Jaehaerys or something like that in truth, if it's even revealed at all what his name was intended to be. So yeah, that's the significance of this story, is that we're seeing the grandfather of John and Daenerys, and when he becomes king, and how that's, so we will probably see, if not this season, the next season, or at least the last season, because they'll probably only do 3, because there's only 3. It's 3 short. So we'll see a very young Maester Aemon, like literally in his
that's right,
20s or 30s, like a very young man who would just swear at his vows to the Night's Watch. They actually try to bring him back to take the throne, which he mentions in that, but he says no, and he, and so his younger brother ascends to the throne, and it's a big deal because his father, Mycor Targaryen, was also like a 4th son who became the king, and that's a very rare thing to be.
4th son of a 4th son.
Yeah, so to have that much pruning of the royal tree in that short of time. So he's the 4th son. Aegon Egg is the 4th son of the 4th son, and so that's kind of where all this stuff is kind of alluding to, is that we're going to see the earliest of the Daenerys Jon branch of the Targaryen family, and how it gets to sets things up for that later.
See, that's pretty dope, and I think that's the part where the one good thing I will say, or one thing interesting thing about Game of Thrones, it has that crazy family trees and how everything kind of connects in this way. And it's like, even you listening, I'm like, wait a minute, who is this? It takes me a little bit, but once you connect all the pieces, it makes it more fun. And I think that's the one thing that, like, another fantasy show that we watch that's in space is really horrible about doing. But they, to George's credit, he makes sure that he'll give a space so that each thing can live on its own, but then he'll always make sure that like you said, that spiritual tissue will connect, so that if I just watch this straight, I'm watching a sword and fantasy show, it looks interesting, little spike kid, tall ass knight, bunch awesome. But if I've watched anything Game of Thrones in the last 15 years, if I've read anything Game of Thrones, I'm gonna be like, oh snaps, that's this person. But it doesn't take away from the overall experience.
Yeah, and it just supports the overall big themes of where they're going with it. Like I like the sort of the tethering of all of these characters historically, and also the casting is intentional, because if you notice, that guy kind of resembles Gwendolyn Christie a little bit, and the whole thing about Brienne of Tarth is that she is a descendant of Sir Duncan the Tall, the character that he's playing. So they're keeping the consistency of their casting, of how they're building the world. I also noted that in the trailer, I like the gloominess of it, because I think thematically that's how I picture, and also the way George describes it in the book. It's a very gloomy time for various reasons, but thematically it is literally that kind of period where the Targaryens start to rise again, but then things happen and people make bad choices, and because Aegon, his whole thing, how his life ends, and this is not spoiling the story, because his life ends many decades after these events, when he's an adult older man, but he attempts to wake dragons again at the Targaryen summer palace in Summerhall, and it burned down, and he and Sir Duncan the Tall and several others died. And it just so happens out on the lawn, Rhaegar Targaryen is being born when this happened. So in a way, metaphorically, he did wake a dragon. It just wasn't a literal dragon, but his granddaughter, as far as the show is concerned, will go on to actually wake dragons. So all of that is probably going to be hinted at, but it also is a good story that stands on its own, because this is one of those stories that's rare in the overall tapestry of George R.R. Martin's world, which is Sir Duncan the Tall is a gallant knight. He is a knight that is chivalrous and that is heroic, and you see that juxtapositioning, because he gets no respect. He's not actually at first, and you'll see this. I don't want to spoil this, but these are the kind of things where the story really shines through. Is George R.R. Martin has created these institutions that are somewhat reflexive of real world things, and then he challenges it. So again, all the knights around him are already lords, and they have money, and they can afford to have their gallantry and their tents and stuff. And whereas when we meet Sir Duncan, he's burying the guy who would have knighted him, who happened to be a hedge knight, but not a very good one. And so now he's taking his shield, and he's on the road, and then he meets this by chance Targaryen princeling and hiding, and it just changes. It's one of those great heroes' journeys that we haven't gotten a lot of in. Well, we got it in Game of Thrones, but this is one that's different, that doesn't involve a magical character or a great house, or a person from a great house. The great house involved is House Targaryen, but
and also one of the things that stuck me thematically through Game of Thrones and all of it is anyone that was altruistic in any of the shows, you save a cat, you're getting your arm chopped off. Right. It's like you do something positive, or you're a person of like high morals and nobility and all that, you're getting thrown out a window, you're getting eaten by something, you're getting chopped off. Something is happening to you. Where I think this is going to be a cool, interesting story where you get to see kind of like a rags to riches type of a character who actually is at his core, a good dude. And he gets it, and those deeds and kind of morals are actually pretty much rewarded, as opposed to previous stuff that you've seen. Like it's like Game of Thrones in general is just dire. It's just like death, carnage, betrayal. Like it's like every
cynical reflection of our own world, and that's the whole point, that even in his histories and his legends and his myths, they're all sinister reflections of our histories and our legends and our myths. And so when you have all these characters sort of mishmashing together, because we're going to see different Targaryens, some that are cool, and some, at least one who we saw in the trailer, who's a maniac. And so all of these things, and really what's great about, again, this story is that we see the makings of a hero and a king simultaneously, right? We see the building up of what would make a good king. Aegon Egg spends his time amongst the small folks. He can sympathize with them because he knows them. And that is something that is added to him that's going to make him potentially a good king, right? If he is in fact made a king, which is at that point is far out of his purview, out of his thought.
Fourth son of the fourth son. So it's like I can just go live my life, as opposed to really thinking about being king. But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and then with Duncan, it's like he doesn't have those strappings of nobility that create this sense of, or like a Sir Jaime Lannister, or these knights who we've seen that they have all the trappings of the chivalrous knight and the heroic knight, but they're nothing like that. It's like the boys of Westeros. It's literally like the Knights of Westeros are like the Supes from The Boys. They have all of the trappings of what they should be, but they are far from it. But with Duncan, we're gonna actually get a chivalrous, heroic knight.
Yeah, and I think that's the part that's going to be for me, especially within the Game of Thrones TV canon. It's something that we get to actually see if like a good thing. Because I remember when I first was introduced to Game of Thrones, it was mine for me. It was a TV series, and then I went to read the first book, anyways. But I remember because I was watching it, and I was like, when Ned Stark gets beheaded, I was kind of like, wait, hold on, wait, that's the dude on all the posters, and I was like. And then from then on, it was just like, oh, so anybody can get it. And yes, over the course of the series, anybody can get it. No, there's not one good person until most of the protagonists of that you would think of in a normal sense, they get put through the ringer, or they get killed. And that's kind of that was the theme that I picked up from Game of Thrones after that first season, where I was just like, wait, stop. Where's the, someone comes in and saves them and they nope, none of that.
Yeah, no, they make their choices. And that's what makes him such an interesting writer, is that he writes as a gardener. He lays seeds for things that may grow into something or they may not. But it's always driven by the choices that are in front of his characters. And that's what makes the story compelling. That's what grounds it in the human experience. Because again, we get that challenge, for example, with Tolkien, and he's talked about this, like Aragorn is a good king because he's Aragorn or what, but where's the challenge to that? He's a good king because of circumstances, maybe, but not necessarily because he's just ordained to be a good king. So all of those things you see challenged, and I think it's going to show the Targaryens at a different point in their rule, obviously, but again, it's going to show them at the vulnerable part. And then so we have seen probably the strongest period during the Dance of the Dragons. Now we're coming to, they're still ruling, but they are severely weakened. And Game of Thrones proper is when 17 years after the dynasty has been smashed and they've fallen.
Yep. And you get to see all three, which I think is super interesting, because then, again, it goes back to the Targaryens are essentially the stars of the show, if you want to put it that way. But
yeah,
or the main characters, and everything else is
they're his elves of the story. Like when you think of Galadriel and the elves in Elrond and the elves of Beleriand and Valinor, they all were connected to magic and stars and things like that, and fire. And so if you think about the way the Targaryens and the Dragon Lords of Valyria are described, that tall, pale skin with the silvery blonde hair and the eyes that are like purplish and violet, like these are elven features, like that's why they are the elves of that world. So and probably more akin to the dark elves of that world, because the Valyrians, after all, were slavers, and they practice dark magic and stuff like that. And dragons are basically a magical nuke or weapon of mass destruction. So
pretty much, that's a good way to look at it. Well, we'll leave it there. As you can see, we're on board. As you can tell, sometimes you watch some of these trailers and we're like, what's going on? Other times we're like, we're in. Other times we're like, maybe.
And this is like, we'll give it a look. And for 6 episodes, why not? It's based on a very contained story. If I'm not mistaken, he wrote these maybe a little bit after or before the main series. So this is a lot of his world building on the side. So it'll be fun for people who've enjoyed both shows so far.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, that's it for us tonight. And catch more of us. We have a bunch of trailers dropping from Comic-Con, and we're gonna watch them all. We're gonna react to them all. Sometimes it just be us two, sometimes it'll be all of us, but we'll see what it is. Also,
we got a little bit. Sorry. I just wanted to add that we got a little bit of panel talk for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. We got Josh on the scene, so we got that coming and cooking up for us as well. So yeah, Blerdlines is we out here in the Comic-Con street. So we'll let you guys know what's going on, and we'll see you soon.